legacy begins in the year 1300 with Wendell and Elena Barrow, our Gen Zero founders. Together, they had 3 children. The first is Cecilia, who is married to her childhood sweetheart, Jeffrey Baker. Their second child is our main sim for Generation 1, Frederick Barrow, who has just married Rosemary. And their youngest daughter is Gemma, who was arranged to marry Stuart Hale, much to her displeasure. As soon as we began, Elena's time was already up, and we were down to 3 sims in our main household. The year started off slow since we had no money, and the market table wasn't working. Our only source of income at that point in time was to obsessively search pockets. By the time the first year was up, all 3 women of the first generation were pregnant. Frederick began working on his woodworking skill, and Wendell was working hard to make the farm a success while he still mourned his wife. During this year, I also declared several times that Wendell wouldn't marry again, which, spoiler alert, was a lie. In 1301, Rosemary gave birth to her first child, Stephanie, and both mother and child were healthy. Frederick's sisters also gave birth, while Cecilia welcomed her daughter, Thalia. Gemma had twins, of which only one survived. 1302 was a bit of a bummer. It started off with Frederick failing his young adult role, and then the Grim Reaper just didn't bother to show up. I pretended to plead with him by re-rolling, and thankfully Frederick survived the second roll. Unfortunately, karma came back to get me for cheating, and we lost Gemma's newborn daughter and her infant son. And I also mixed up the rules and killed off Gemma when she should have survived. Sorry, Gemma. Cecilia then lost her newborn and her infant as well. Only the Barrow family got a bit of luck. Rosemary gave birth to twins Brayden and Frederick, and Stephanie safely aged up into a toddler. In 1303, Wendell suffered a midlife crisis and decided he wanted to casual woohoo and get married. I sent him to the tavern where he immediately met his soulmate Shanna. They hit it off a bit too well, and she got pregnant that very evening. They ended up getting married in the fastest ceremony ever seen in Windenburg to this day. The twins both got the gassy infant trait and spent the year farting up a storm, after which they successfully aged up into toddlers, turning Frederick the Younger into a fussy little demon. Meanwhile, Stephanie was an exemplary big sister and everybody loved her. In 1304, Rosemary and Frederick welcomed baby Noah into the world, but Cecilia Baker lost another baby. Shanna then gave birth to her first child with Wendell, and they named her Amy. In 1305, Rosemary was still haunted by a single flirtatious encounter she was a victim of 5 years prior, and so she confessed to woohooing with another, which she didn't, and everyone was sad for days. Noah aged up into a toddler and became a charmer. Apart from one hideous table, Frederick started to make actual money with his woodworking, and that allowed Rosemary and Shanna to go out shopping. While at the market, Shanna made a wish for simoleons at the wishing well, and in an unexpected turn of events, she was granted 20,000 simoleons. Shanna's first daughter Amy passed away shortly after, and the rumor in the village was that Shanna actually sacrificed her daughter's life in exchange for cold hard cash. The year ended with the birth of Shanna and Wendell's second daughter, Gabriella. In 1306, I threw an exciting birthday party for Shanna, during which she failed her role and died, taking with her my budding plotline involving witchcraft. Gemma also made her daring return and revealed that she had faked her death to escape her marriage and was now living in Henford. Shanna and Wendell's daughter Gabriella aged up into an infant, but Wendell began feeling conflicted because he could already feel that she would become an orphan sooner rather than later. Our firstborn Stephanie aged up and became the first child of Generation 2, while Rosemary gave birth to yet another son, Kalen. In 1307, our twins Brayden and Frederick both successfully aged up into children. Brayden began to take his role as our future heir a bit too seriously, while Frederick turned out to be an animal enthusiast. Due to my mismanagement of their funds, the family struggled once again to pay their taxes and had to resort to selling the children's toys to pay off their debts. Rosemary and Frederick lost a child for the first time, while Cecilia in our side household started to see a bit of good luck and gave birth to another son, bringing her count of healthy children up to 4. I failed at organizing an archery contest by having only Brayden own a bow since we were too poor to buy any for anyone else, and so he won a whopping 1,500 simoleons. Kalen aged up into a toddler and officially earned the title of my favorite child, which means there is a high risk he's destined for tragedy, especially because he's showing an alarming affinity for the pond. Meanwhile, in Henford, Gemma managed to marry an aging knight, only to discover that he has 2 adult sons who are already fighting over their father's estate. The oldest son, Sir Lucan, becomes especially suspicious of Gemma's intentions. In 1308, our children began making some friends, and our heir Braden met a rich-looking little boy named Quentin de Lacy. In our side households, the Baker family welcomed another son named Vincenzo, and Gemma tried a little too hard to get her handsome stepson to like her and ended up in his bed. As it turns out, not only is he evil, but he is also her soulmate. Yep, she came back from the dead for this. In 1309, it was time to say goodbye to our patriarch, Wendell. Gemma showed up autonomously, and the three siblings got to see him off into the next life together. Gabriella was left an orphan, but Frederick, having grown attached to his little sister, decided to keep her and raise her as his own. Our little charmer Noah aged up into a child and turned out to be a bad-natured little who makes messes everywhere. Quentin invited Braden to play hooky, which he immediately accepted because he wants to be friends with the rich folk. Meanwhile, Noah tagged along to commit acts of vandalism. Rosemary gave birth to another daughter named Adriana, which for some reason made all of our other kids unhappy. Except Braden. Braden's a good kid. In the Baker household, Cecilia also gave birth to a healthy daughter and named her Lucia. The decade ends as it began, saying goodbye to a founder parent and with all three ladies pregnant again, although one of them is substantially less enthused about it. We move on to the 1310s with 6 Gen 2 children in our main household and 6 Gen 2 children in our side household. During our first decade, we had 11 Sims pass away, 3 of them being adults and the rest of them under 1 year of age. Our current average life expectancy at birth is 12 years old, but with the famine coming in 5 years, I don't expect this will be improving anytime soon. Thank you so much to everyone for following along, and I will see you in 1310.